Hey, Aubrey, what's going on? How are you?
Hey, I'm excited for in just a couple of days the Women's World Cup starts. We
Amazing.
know a very avid soccer fan, don't we, Lindsay?
She's on our team. Jessica is a big soccer fan. I know she plays soccer, she watches soccer, she's super passionate about women's soccer.
Yes.
So
That's
amazing.
so awesome. And my kids play soccer, so I go to a
Oh,
lot of
cool.
soccer games, football to most of the rest of the world, but in the US
Right.
we call it soccer.
Why is that?
But
Why do we call it so differently
I
from the
don't
rest
know,
of
it
the
is
world?
strange. It would be interesting to find out why it got switched to soccer and why we call it that. I don't know that.
I
Interesting.
don't know. So when did the games start here in the
July
Women's World
20th.
Cup?
So in 2
Mm,
days, Women's World Cup. It's interesting. All of you listening out there, I would love to know if your country is in the Women's World Cup, right? Australia, New Zealand, the US, Spain, and Germany. This is an exciting one. And soccer fans are just so die hard,
oh,
um, which just means
yes.
the same as avid, right? They are serious about it. They are big fans. They love their teams, which makes
Yes.
this a really great conversation topic.
Yes, 100%. Oh, I love this topic for our listeners because so many of our listeners are going to love soccer around the
Absolutely.
world. Diehard fans. Where do we go today for today's episode? Aubrey,
Yeah,
where
so
should
we
we
found
take
this really
this?
cool article about the 2023 Women's World Cup, which is sort of record breaking or potentially record breaking because there might be a three-peat. So, that word and some other vocab in English we're going to teach you so that you're ready to start a conversation about this with anyone at work, at home, friends, family, anyone who might be a soccer fan or not. This is a fun conversation.
I love it. I love it. And I think we've talked a little bit on All Ears English about FIFA, about the corruption in FIFA,
Yeah.
about the World Cup, men's World Cup, but a lot of the talent is with the women.
Yes, absolutely, right? Have you ever been anywhere where the World Cup is happening and been able to
Yes.
see when on my honeymoon when I was young in France, we were there for the World Cup
Ooh,
and all of the sports bars, just like the little bars, were packed and
it's
everyone was so
amazing.
loud and exciting. It was quite an event.
Yeah, I've had 2 experiences similar to that one, Aubrey. So in 2010, I was hiking the Camino de Santiago in northern Spain. I think I was actually in Pamplona, also around the time of running of the bulls, which was
Oh, that's
insane.
cool. Yeah.
Just lucky timing. And that was when in 2010 when Spain won the World Cup. So I was in a small town
Ooh.
bar in Spain when they won, and then just in Argentina, we were in Argentina right before they won the World Cup here in 2022 in last year, end of last
Amazing.
year. So yeah, I've been close to it, adjacent to these big world soccer events. Yeah,
It's so fun to see these like super diehard fans get
cool.
so excited for their team. And I can't even imagine just the excitement and happiness when their country wins. It's so exciting.
Oh, there's so much emotion. It just matters so much to people around the world, this game. I think soccer is just sorry, football is
Yes.
so much more than a game to most of the world. It carries history, politics, influencers, way of life, values. It's so much more than a game.
Right. Absolutely. Often the team that you root for, right? The team you support,
Mhm.
your parents and your grandparents, like it's a family thing too, right? A lot of family
Oh my gosh.
bonds are over maybe the football team they support and always cheer for. And a lot of interesting events are planned around these games. So it's a big deal.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal. I love it. I love it. So, all right. So, we want to go through some vocabulary for our listeners today to really be able to grab onto these conversations.
Yes, right. So, this article, the first thing that we noticed that would be super interesting to talk about is it was saying that a lot of people are setting their sights on the
Hmm.
Women's World Cup, right? It is going to
Yeah.
be in Australia and New Zealand. And that's an interesting idiom to set your sights on something. It means you're looking forward to it, you're planning on it, right? And we use it all the time in English, just something where we're looking forward to. We set our
Yeah.
sights on it.
Something kind of on the horizon coming up, right? And that we're already
Exactly.
starting to think about, plan for, that kind of thing. Um,
Exactly. Even an athlete, you might say they set their sights on a win, right? This
yeah.
athlete is setting their sights on winning the
Mm.
Women's World Cup.
Yeah, I love it. And then the next chunk of vocabulary, guys, would be favored to win, right? Who is favored to win? Um,
Like who's expected to win, right?
mhm,
And in this 2023 Women's World Cup, the top four that are favored to win are the US,
mm.
England, Spain, and Germany. So this for any, sport or race, there's often a team that's favored to win, that's expected to win. And the other team or teams sometimes are called an underdog. I like to root for the underdog. I love it when someone wins that it wasn't expected to win.
Yeah. Usually for men's soccer, the US doesn't go very far. I think this
Right.
past time they did though, if I
A
remember
little better,
correctly. I think they went
but
further
not
than they normally
yeah,
would.
not like women's. The women's US soccer
Yeah.
team is amazing.
Well, that's why I think maybe we do a follow-up episode on this about the controversy in women's pay on the women's soccer league, the
Mm,
FIFA Women's World Cup or the Women's World Cup, because the pay does not match the quality of the play, right? And they've been
yes.
fighting for that for many years.
Right. We've talked about this in the business world, just the pay gap, gender pay
Yeah.
gap, but this is huge in sports
Yeah.
for athletes, both pay gap and also often the amount of fervor behind the games or the amount of people, right? There's not equality in a lot of ways in sports.
Yeah, it's so weird. You would think that you have men's soccer in the US. I'm just talking US now. I'm not
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
Argentina, Spain. You have women's soccer. Clearly, the women's soccer is a better team, right? So why
Right.
would that not get all the attention? It does within a niche group of fans, but I think World Cup men's is more broad I don't
Absolutely.
know. It's always bothered
It's
me.
a lot more glaring, the,
Yeah.
inequality there, especially in pay, because if they're such a reputable, prestigious team, and we can go
Yeah.
over that word here too, right? They inspire respect and admiration. That's what prestigious means, because they
Correct.
win a lot and they're so good, the players are amazing, so the pay should be equal, if not better. If they're doing better than the men's team, they should be paid more,
I would think
and that's
so.
not
It
the
makes
case.
sense to me. Oh, yeah. Wow. Never ending controversy for sure. And then what about this term, a three-peat?
Yeah, so
Repeat.
this means to win 3 times in a row. So it's sort of a play on the word repeat. A three-peat, so the US could complete a historic three-peat is what's in this article, meaning they
Uh-huh.
would win the World Cup 3 times in a row.
Oh, I love that. When I was young, I followed a lot of tennis. I played tennis, followed a lot of tennis, and they use this term to talk about Pete Sampras winning three, and so I thought it was actually just a tennis thing, and I thought it was
Oh.
three Pete, like get it, three Pete,
Oh,
like
like
Peter,
Pete
Pete.
Sampras
Yeah,
is named after Pete.
yeah.
That's funny.
And now I'm learning today it's about more than just tennis. Very good.
You were today years old when you learned three-peat's not just about tennis.
Oh, there's so much I learned on this show with you, Aubrey. It's really good.
That's funny.
All right, Aubrey. So, what about some conversation starters here? What can we do to get
Yes,
this conversation
absolutely.
going?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we want you guys to be able to start a conversation about this. It's an interesting thing to talk about. So, we'll give you a couple of ways to jump in and start that conversation. First, you can
Yes.
say, are you going to watch and in this case, Women's World Cup, right? Are you going to
Yeah.
watch the Women's World Cup? And of course, you
Mhm.
can replace that with any sport, any match that's coming up. So, it's important to kind of stay up on sports news and know the big events that are coming up so that you can start a conversation about it.
Oh my gosh, for sure. And then number 2 is who do you want to win? Right? So very basic,
Mhm.
very straightforward, but guys, you don't need some fancy wordsmithing to
Right.
start a connection conversation about this topic, right?
Exactly, right? We saw in that article this phrase favored to win, but I wouldn't use that in a conversation. I wouldn't
Yeah, I
say, who do
agree.
you think is favored to win? This is more
Mm-mm.
likely you're going to see it in the news, you're going to hear it in a report. But when we're just having a casual conversation about it, we'll just say, who do you think will win? Or who do you want
Yeah.
to win?
Yeah, and then if you wanna get into, we can here we're keeping it to purely to the sport, the game, which is great, right? Keeping it very non-controversial, but if you did wanna get into the pay gap, right? How would we maybe open a conversation, just a spontaneous idea, Aubrey? What would you say to open up a conversation about that? What do you
Yeah,
think?
you could see, what do you think about pay inequality in sports? And you're still keeping it
Mhm.
pretty general. And then if the
Mhm.
person you're asking has an opinion about, then they might specifically talk about soccer or
Yeah.
certain sports they're familiar with. So
Yeah.
that might be good to sort of start it general and see where
I
it
like that
goes.
idea. I like how you
Mhm.
start it general because that also lets you feel out whether this is a conversation you wanna have with this person. Right? I mean,
Yep.
sometimes maybe someone isn't aware of the pay gap in men's and women's soccer or they don't care. So it's not really worth it having that conversation, I think, unless you're trying to build awareness. And so we can
Exactly.
ask something super broad to feel it out, like dip our toe in the water and see.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's interesting because we do want to leave it open, knowing that whoever we're talking to is
yeah,
going to have strong opinions in some areas and less so in other areas. So if we can start a conversation a little more general, give them a chance to add what's really interesting to them. And then the
yeah.
conversation will be much more two-sided and interesting for everyone.
It's true. I think it's a turnoff to anyone when you come into a conversation like a bull in a china shop and say, "I think this. What do you think?" It's just a
Right.
turnoff. Even if they agree with you, it's too much.
It's too
Back off
much.
if you want a true connection. Okay, just back off.
That's a
Um,
really good point.
yeah, it's too much. I do have an interesting observation. I've always wondered why, when it comes, and I know why, right? Because Women's World Cup is not considered. Why do we say Women's World Cup and why do we say World Cup for Men's World Cup?
Mm.
Like, why?
It's
Why?
interesting. I think that really gets into why there is a pay gap and why there are
Yes,
more fans on one side, right?
right.
Because just the fact that you're just calling it World Cup instead of Men's World Cup implies that that is the
Yes,
World Cup. And then the other one is
e
secondary, is Women's World Cup.
exactly.
Yeah,
Or why do we say WNBA and NBA, right?
right.
I
Why
mean,
isn't it
it's for the
MNBA?
same. Yeah.
It's
Anyway,
interesting how a lot of these implications and stereotypes and mindsets are created because of the language that we use. The titles we
totally.
use for things and the way we
Mhm.
talk about things reinforce these stereotypes.
Words really matter, you know? Words really
Yeah.
matter. Words set a tone, words create prestige or lack thereof. So it does matter what we name things. That's super interesting, Aubrey. I
Yes,
love that.
absolutely. I think this is a great takeaway that we do want to think about the language we're using in a lot of ways, right? As our
Yeah.
society is becoming more modern, more thoughtful, more tolerant and respectful, we're trying to think about how to be better with the language we use. And sports is another one of the things on the list, right? Think about how we're talking about it, what we're saying, and if maybe some adjustments should be made.
Yeah, and also the fact that, guys, go back, listen to this episode again, review it, write down these terms. We've given you some basic terms, right? But these are just good enough to get that conversation started. I think soccer is probably one of the 5 things that you can talk about with pretty much anyone in the world. Like having conversations with Argentine people in Argentina in November was amazing about soccer, right? That's amazing to be able to do that. Sit down and talk about soccer with someone. It's a universal topic. We all
Yes.
love the game. So really hone in on these conversation starters to get further with your connection in English, right?
Absolutely. I think that's such a great takeaway, right? You want to start conversations that are going to be fun and lively and interesting. And
Yes.
soccer is one of those things that it's pretty rare. Someone who is apathetic about soccer, or even if they
Yeah.
don't play or they don't have a favorite team, they're still interested. They know someone who is.
For sure. So go for it, guys. Go for that connection around soccer. So good. I mean football, of course.
Of course, we mean football.
All right, Aubrey. Thanks for talking football today. It's been fun.
Yes, absolutely. I'll see you next time.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.